from the members? No, great. Now, I wasn't at the previous minute, so I'm going to ask those present, are they a correct record of the meeting on the 23rd of July?
Yeah, I'm happy with it.
Great. Okay, lots of nodding. Okay, they are approved. We have no addresses from members of the public, no addresses from councillors, so we can go straight into item 6. I mean, I was just going to say something before Roger starts. Some of us, not many of us, were on the training session in which Roger presented slides and spoke to them. I gather there was a problem with the recording of the sound, but the slides, have they been forwarded to everyone? They have been forwarded. So I'm just going to say to Roger, can you please keep it brief? Because I will assume some of us will have heard it all, and others, I hope, have at least looked at the slides. So I hope that's okay.
Certainly.
Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So at the last committee meeting in July, members experienced difficulties reading the risk registers. And in response, a revised format has been agreed with committee and member services. And this new layout simplifies the presentation by reducing the numbers of columns that you will see. What were previously separate fields, service name, risk title, risk description, and cause, have now been consolidated into a single risk description column. And additionally, only the current risk score is shown alongside the control description and an update on progress with its implementation. So the report outlines the outcome of the Council's quarterly review of both corporate and service risk registers, and this review was completed at the end of September. Just to very briefly, Mr. Chair, summarise the process. Risk owners and those responsible for implementing controls are required to update their respective entries. The updated registers are then reviewed and signed off by the relevant director, followed by scrutiny and approval from the corporate leadership team. And then the final version, which you have in front of you, is presented to the Audit and Governance Committee. This formal review process is further supported by the Council's Risk Management Group, which undertakes a rolling programme of service risk register reviews, and it also reviews the corporate risk register. So you have the corporate risk register, and appendices 1 and 2 present this to you. The overall number of risks remains unchanged, with 6 red and 8 amber risks, and they're identified in the report. However, there have been movements within that. The risk concerning the failure to meet Social Housing Act consumer standards has been escalated from amber to red. And conversely, risk number 97, the Council's ability to respond to a major flood event, has been downgraded from red to amber. Turning to the service risk registers at appendices 3 and 4, a very significant review took place in the summer, which resulted in substantial changes to these risk registers. This latest review has seen fewer adjustments, though new red risks have emerged in the areas of Social Housing Regulation Act and the ongoing management and partnership approach to the external leisure provision contract. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes my introduction to the report.
That is wonderfully concise. Thank you very much, Roger. I'm going to suggest that unless there are questions about the methodology, which I think you explained in your presentation earlier for training, unless I don't see any hands up for that, I was going to suggest we first look at the corporate registers and then look at the service risk registers. So let's start with corporate risk registers. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee? I don't see any hands raised.
Chair,
Oh, please, yes.
I think the risk registers are discussed actually as well, aren't they, by BDO as well too? And I think we probably have more to say there. I'd just like to say thank you again to Roger for your training. Theo and I were both there for all of it, which was good. But it is noted that when you come on the corporate risk registers, that we do seem to have a slight increase on the number of red ones, and amber too, and that the green is slightly down. Did you want to comment on those at all, Roger?
No, so comparing to the last quarter, the number of red and amber risks are the same, and there aren't any green risks within the corporate risk register. Green risks are typically managed within the service area. And so in terms of number of risks, the risk profile has stayed the same from the last report.
Seeing no more on the corporate, what about the service risk register? Are there any questions? You do? Ros, yeah?
That's what I was really referring to. I do apologise for returning the page too fast. It was the service risk registers that I was actually looking at, the changes there, where we've got some changes there. With the green going down and the red and amber going up.
Yeah. So I would agree that that would indicate a slight worsening, if I can put it like that, of the council's risk profile. The number of risks identified has nudged down by just 2. But yes, there is a drift from green into amber, and we've got the additional 2 the additional red risks as well. So yes, I take that point that there is a move towards an increased risk profile overall.
So just looking at the 27 and 33, planning and property assets there, failure to implement an asset management system capable of storing and analysing data may hinder the council's ability to effectively plan and schedule work. And this could result in delays in property lettings, difficulties in providing timely insurance information, and increased risk of non-compliance. Whose area would that be? That would be,
Yeah.
whose area would that be, Chair? Property and assets. Yours.
Property.
Yeah.
Corporate assets.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that comes under you then, Nigel.
No.
Oh, it doesn't.
No. That'd be Jane Winfield, actually.
Jane.
Service director.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Or is she? No.
I marked that up. I wasn't quite sure. I mean, these presumably are discussed with the individual services, but I'm surprised. I mean, maybe there's more going on than I'm aware of, but it didn't seem to me to be a red risk. I mean, have you seen this one? Quality of data and property knowledge. I mean, it'll never be perfect. I just wondered if it's a red risk.
Can I come in on that point, Mr. Chair?
Roger,
Would that be
yes.
appropriate?
Yes, Roger.
So as well as facilitating the council's risk registers, I also look after the insurance arrangements for the council. And what I would say is that over the last few years, probably going back 5 years, and the demands that insurers are making around increased information on properties, particularly with regards to what they're made out of, that these demands are becoming ever greater. And if you're not able to produce the necessary information that will satisfy underwriters, then they're more reluctant to quote for insurance. And so property department is going through a process, I understand, of improving the quality of data and also the method by which that is stored within a new system. So I understand that risk is addressed, and as it impacts on insurance, that the council's insurers are being kept informed and kept in line on that matter.
Thank you very much. Ros again.
Sorry, I'm sorry to keep on about it, but under 96 property assets, if there's a lack of legal support, the council being able to meet income, capital receipt and project targets. I mean, if there is a lack of legal support, is there a lack of legal support? I mean, this is all tied to income for the council, and so it really is could be quite a serious thing. So I guess the question is there a lack of legal support? I know we have our senior legal officer off at the moment still, I believe. Is that right? Yeah, she is. Thank you.
May I ask, do you want to respond to that,
I mean,
Nigel?
one more thing under this, why I wondered why it's amber and not red sort of thing, is 126 communities and citizen services, the financial savings from community centres. Failure to achieve the necessary savings may result in financial pressure to the council or in decline of services delivered. And of course, a lot of people rely on our community centres and things. So it's really quite serious on two things, not just sort of council failure to, and further on in our reports tonight, we've got failure to really sort of do proper financial processes with regard to cash and so forth, which is a bit worrying on the community centres. But yeah, sorry, Nigel, I think you want to come in, don't you?
Yeah, thank you. I think can I bring Rachel in, basically, who's the council's temporary monitoring officer, basically, to perhaps talk about the legal support, actually. It might be more appropriate. I think in terms of the community centre comment, basically, I think the thing I'd say there is, obviously, the council is about to go into its next iteration of budget setting, and we'll certainly be picking that up, basically, as to whether those savings are going to be achieved, and if they aren't, then we need to do in some form of adjustment to the budget, basically, going forward. But I've every confidence that that position will be mitigated when we do the next iteration of the budget. But Rachel, do you want to just comment on perhaps on the legal support side of things for me?
Yeah, certainly. Good evening, members. I suppose what I can contribute to this, I mean, I'm just holding the fort temporarily for Emma, is that there is a legal restructure that is underway and being planned at the moment to really have a look at capacity within the legal service and, get the right the right expertise in the right places. So that will be really following what the drive is, what the corporate need is. So case in point with this, to get more commercial expertise on the property side in-house and kind of lessen the usage of locums to try and get some more permanent staff in place. So that is happening, but obviously it's not here right now, but that is in train. So yeah, just to add that.
Yeah, I'm sorry to repeat myself again, but I think I'm feeling a little bit of deja vu's coming over me with regard to the council's sort of lack of good legal in-house. And I think, suggest on a previous occasion that the council should be growing our own and actually having some apprentices in, or legal assistants in, and actually getting them trained and developed and nurtured into place for the council. Rather than using expensive locums, that's what I'm thinking.
Do you know the situation, Rachel, with apprentices, legal assistants?
I don't, I'm afraid. I don't. But
Yeah.
it makes sense to grow your own. I can speak just in terms of legal service provision across the piece in local government and what that's like, just through other hats that I wear in the sector. And it is a tough gig, and that is what lots of authorities are doing, going to shared services arrangements or growing their own and really harnessing talent and, building good succession.
Yeah, just to add to that, I suppose, and I suppose a bit more of background knowledge, because we respect Rachel hasn't been here that long, actually, but I know from my knowledge, basically, that there are some legal apprentices and they are doing well, basically, but there are still, as Rachel says, there are still some fundamental structural issues within the law and governance team They struggle to maintain and retain the staff that they've got at the moment. They are still relying on locums. Clearly, that is not sustainable going forward, but it's a difficult market basically to recruit and retain staff into basically. So that's the position at the moment. I'm sure Emma Jackman, when she comes back, basically, I know is looking to restructure the team and will focus on this as one of her key priorities. But at the moment, as Rachel said, is the position as is a difficult one basically to manage.
Thank you. I'm looking, I had just one question. I mean, number 55, which is, this is for law again, income target not achieved. If it's not achieved, additional pressure will be placed on the overall budget, leading to overspend. I mean, I would have thought this is a kind of comment you could make on almost any area. I mean, I just don't understand why that is singled out as a special service area risk, when, like I say, I suspect if you asked the same question of planning, they'd probably say the same. You know, there are many service areas that struggle in the current job market. I mean, I guess I should ask Roger to respond.
Yeah, so individual directors are each have their own service risk register, and what you have in front of you is all of them combined into a single document. So while yes, this has been highlighted by Emma in legal, other directors, if they wanted to, would, and they thought it was particularly pertinent to their service area, they would be able to have a similar risk within this same document when they're brought together and combined. We've got an overall finance risk in the corporate risk register. If Nigel felt that combined together it was sufficient to be its own separate risk, then that would be something that we could do. But I suspect that it would be just one small element of that overall finance corporate risk.
Thank you very much. Any more questions? If not, I would like to thank you very much, Roger. And I see we're meant to do no more or no less than noting its contents. We don't have to approve it, but I'm sure we do approve it. So thank you very much indeed. So let us now move on, after an awful lot of pages, to the first internal audit. So welcome back to Gurpreet. When did you first come to Oxford? And you've moved up the ladder a lot. I don't know whether you can go much higher, but congratulations. And we've got Joe as your new colleague, for us, a new colleague. So welcome. Would you like to introduce the internal audit progress report? And Melissa, I see online, maybe to respond to some of your comments.
Thank you, Chair. Is that working? Yep. So the first paper is the progress report. We also have in this pack the procurement report, which is a separate paper as it's attracted a limited opinion. The follow-up report, which Joe will cover as a separate item, and then our annual opinion, which this committee has seen before, but it is updated. So in terms of progress report, there's a progress on 24-25. There were two outstanding reports for that, which are summarised in this progress report for QL and income generation. And then it also summarises for 25-6 the reviews that we've done to date, one of which is purchase cards that I've just mentioned, which will come on to separately. And within this progress report, two further reports, one on treasury management and one on EDI, on equality, diversity and inclusion. So there's three reports completed in the current year, and with Joe's oversight, we're on track to make sure we can make good headway for the remainder of the reviews. So what I was going to do, Chair, was to summarise the EDI report and the treasury one, then take questions. Well, QL and income generation, I will take those as read, but happy to take questions on them. And then obviously separately, we can move to the procurement report afterwards. So the first of the two reports is equality, diversity and inclusion. So this was an advisory report. Just to frame this one, and members may well be familiar, the fundamental legislation that underpins this is the Equality Act 2010, which sets out the various protected characteristics. And then drawing from that is the public sector equality duty. And what that does is places a duty on local authorities not only to comply with that act, but to eliminate conduct that's not permitted under that, and also advance equality as well. So it pushes the boundaries further. Then the final piece, before I then go into the final findings, is the local government equalities framework, which was reissued in 2021. And this goes into further detail, setting out against 4 different pillars what a local authority should try and do to achieve those two, the outcome of those 2 documents. So on the report, it lists out those few bullet points where it says understanding and working with your communities, leadership, organisational commitment, etc. They're those 4 pillars. Some authorities have self-assessed against this. Oxford haven't done that yet. And so what we've done as part of this is to assess against that criteria and provide a view. So you'll see in the colourful table, the yellow and the orange, where we've defined whether we feel you are developing in this area or achieving. When you stand back from this, Oxford do a huge amount in this area. And actually, when you look at your staff survey, there's 6 questions in relation to EDI in your staff survey. And from 23 to 24, those scores have all remained the same or improved. So we do see, when you look at it holistically, a positive picture. You also have a positive action policy and an EDI strategy as well. But to focus on the areas we've identified for improvement, there are a couple of minor ones which were corrected during the audit, which was good to see. You didn't actually have on your website confirmation of your status as a disability confident employer. That's now been updated. That's important so candidates know that you have that status. And I'm glad to see that that's been actioned during the course of the review. There's improvement around succession planning, and there is a succession planning process that has been developed to try and improve where you've got difficult to recruit areas and what your next arrangements are. You do have a strategy on EDI, although it doesn't have an end date. And we do think it's important to have that end date so it gives a target for what the local authority are looking to achieve. And that's being taken forward. There is an action plan for EDI, which is held by the people team. But there are other action plans outside of that, such as your recruitment action plan and your disability confident action plan. We feel that should all be brought together, consolidated in one place so that it can be seen holistically. Also, when you look at some of the actions that are in your people plan, some are off track and they've passed their due dates. And so they need to be revised so you can refocus your efforts appropriately. And another key area is around triangulation of data. Now, the council have done a lot on this. It's very difficult. Not many authorities have this, operating perfectly. But to triangulate data between your staff information in terms of what staff are telling you about their protected characteristics, recruitment information, survey information, and trying to look at it collectively. So this positive action plan you have in place is going to try and help you analyse that data better, but it's acknowledged that that will be taken forward. And there are a few other areas outlined further. The last one I pick up on is around training. It is set up that there is EDI training for new starters, but not necessarily for existing staff or members on a mandatory basis. I think the authority are looking at progressing that when you have a new system in place in November next year. So they're the key areas on the EDI one. We do think there's a lot of positives here. Like I said, this is a very fast and increasingly evolving area. And there's lots of areas of strength which we've identified, but as an advisory position, those findings are outlined. Treasury, which I'll very briefly cover because it's a substantial opinion, Treasury management. This is obviously a critical area for the authority. There are tens, if not hundreds of millions of pounds that go through this area. As an authority, you need to borrow and you need to invest. Your borrowing, as headline figures obviously have increased quite substantially, and your investments have declined. But this review is not to assess and judge how much you invest and borrow. It's to look at, are you complying with SIP for rules? Are things being signed off appropriately by the right people, safely with the right and well-founded kind of institutions, so they're safe and secure investments and borrowings? And on a high level, yes. That's our conclusion, and that's similar to previous years. The controls are sound, robust, adequate segregation of duties, good documentation in place, and it complies from what we can see and test with SIPFA prudential codes of borrowing and investments. There was one minor finding just about improving the documentation because there was one element that was done on a document which could be accessed by different people. That's now on a SharePoint, so that's already been corrected. So it's limited, and approvals on a certain area were not documented in the way that we hoped. That's now going to be documented by email, and Bill Lewis, I think, is on the call. Will be actioning that. So that's a positive report. So I've a breath. That's finishing both of those two. Happy to take questions on any elements of the progress report before we obviously separately move to the procurement cards report.
Thank you very much. First, I'm going to take it in reverse order because yet again, I hope he's not blushing, but Bill Lewis, who is on the call, and Nigel beside me both deserve great praise for very good, consistent treasury management grading. So thank you. And well done. I imagine we don't have any questions other than to say we're very pleased how well you obviously perform in this particular audit. So thank you. I mean, maybe then let's go to the EDI, and we have both Melissa and Sobia online. I suppose a big question, which I will ask, and then I'll invite the committee. A lot of these clearly have implementation dates, which are next year. Do you feel you're on track to achieve these?
Would you like me to go, Sobia? This is a fresh hi, by the way. Sorry, I'm Melissa Hope. I'm Organisational Development Manager. Yes, so the report is quite fresh. So we only finished this audit last month and consolidated the report. So Sobia and I, and then all the relevant members of the team, have gone through each of the points and sort of mapped out what we think is achievable. As noted, one of the actions has already been complete from time.
Yes.
So we're sort of looking at things that can progress quite quickly. I think what was really good about this audit is there were no surprises for us. So where we were coming out as strong, it came up in the audit, and where recommendations were made, 9 times out of 10, we already had them in one of our action plans. So these are things that we were already working on or had in the pipeline anyway. So the answer there is yes, we're on track.
Should have turned this off. Very nice to hear. Thank you. Questions from committee? Ros?
Thank you, and thank you, Melissa and Sophia. I think it is a good report, and it's really good to hear you say that there was no surprises. I think that's always good to hear, actually, when the auditors have picked up on a few things. I noticed that the actual last sentence in the report, it says that we have provided 18 areas to consider, and they've not been prioritised yet. And will need to be considered against the resources available. So again, we're coming back to that old chestnut of resources. Have we got the resources to do it? So I guess my question to both of you, do you feel you have the resources to cover these 18 areas that the auditors have found for you to consider?
Okay, again, I'm happy to go, Sobia, unless you want to come in. Resource-wise, so we are a very small team. The Sobia is the EDI specialist, and then there's myself that support, but we've tried to be realistic here in terms of that's why a lot of the dates are for next year, and you'll notice that they aren't all bundled. So we've tried to assess the amount of work with the resource that we've got and spread that out. I think the most challenging one for us, one of the mentions was about training. So we have an e-learning system, and everybody, as they join us with the council, do that standard EDI training. But what we've been trying to implement as a council is more training. So inclusive recruitment training for hiring managers, equity and intersectionality training for the whole organisation, but especially frontline citizen-facing workers, and also unconscious bias. And that's where we struggle a little bit, because that is training that we're trying to deliver human to human, giving it that lived experience. So what we're trying to do there is look at a staged approach of that. So which of those are more important. I mean, they're all important, but how do we plan that? How do we monitor that? So we think we've been realistic. As I said, there are no surprises there. So we've already started to look at resource. If, as we get going in some of these bigger projects, we feel that it is unmanageable, then I guess we need to bring it back and discuss dates. But we've tried to be realistic in what we're planning against those dates that we've agreed.
Seems very sensible.
I was just going to add something, if that's okay. As Melissa mentioned, the training, and we're also looking at a bit of a more proactive approach where we're actually going out to service areas and saying to them, when are you meeting, when's your away days? We want to come and do our training. So we're not kind of relying on people or services to get in contact with us. We're actually going out to them, which I think is slowly kind of getting out there a bit more, and people are approaching us. So I think that's a real positive.
Could I ask how much of that is in person or is it hybrid?
Good question. So we do a mixed approach because obviously we want to be inclusive. So we tend to have two that are online and then two are in person per year. So that's like our standard for the training that I do, which is the intersectionality and equity training. And that's for all our EDI training. But then if service areas are approaching us, which they have recently, we are happy to do it when they want to. Melissa and I will get together and look at dates. So we're very flexible on what is needed, but we also have to be inclusive as well.
Thank you. Diane, yes?
Thank you. I'd like to hear your thoughts, Sophia, and perhaps and perhaps Melissa, on what it is. I'm speaking in reference to the EDI, these 18 areas that you're considering. The training is one, and we've heard detail about how you're being proactive, which is great. I'm interested in just your philosophical thoughts about what it is to translate training into living practice. If it is, as you say, that you will engage each department, for example, twice a year with a hybrid approach with an attempt to be as inclusive as possible, that is evidently laudable. But it is really important that we are moving just beyond a tick box scenario, or I've done that training, what next? For this to really be living practice. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that and how that is then integrated into this training plan.
Okay.
Shall I start off, or Melissa, would you like?
If you want to start, I can add after.
Yeah, so really good question, an important question. It's a challenge, but we certainly believe that. So we're offering 4 as a standard per year. That's standard, so anybody can join that. We keep a log of who's trained and when they're trained, the time, etc., and what service area they are in. So we do have capacity with our technology to do that. But then we also have been looking at who is not coming forward to the training recently. And then we offer that to their service area. So we're doing a couple, I think next month, actually, Melissa and I are doing that. So we are trying to think outside the box and make sure it's not a tick box, if I can use that word. You know, we want to get out there and talk to people, but we also, you know, we get feedback from our staff once they've done any training, and we ask what their needs are. And there has been some point where, if I can remember correctly, maybe Melissa will remind me about this, but where people have said, you know, actually, you know, a trans conversation has come up and what are we doing about that? So we've gone back and looked at that and seen how we can raise awareness about that particular issue, because that is obviously very important. So we are listening to staff and getting back to them when they do feedback as well, because we don't want a feedback form where people fill in something and no one actually looks at it. I take a lot of pride and time to look at that and actually reach out to people. And I feel that our training is very much a two-way conversation with staff. The training that I do in particular, I talk about my own lived experience, which I think is really valid. I don't want to talk about someone else talking about what they think. I want to talk about how, you know, equity and inclusion, what it means to me, and give examples of lived experience, because that talks more than anything else. And that I have found when I did law and governance, which I can't remember when this year, is that people actually talked about their experience about being LGBT, being the only Black man in the room. So I think that's really important, and I feel quite proud of those aspects of our training, if I can say that.
Thank you.
Of course you can. If I just add there in terms of, so the 4 generic times per year that we do, obviously then we're exactly what Zobia says, but when we're going out to different service areas, we can then tailor it to the situation. So for example, we went to Rose Hill Community Centre to deliver equity and intersectionality training as well as unconscious bias. So we know that they are community based staff sitting in that room. So the scenarios that we're talking about are about those people who we serve. So we try to do that anytime that we go to face training. And next week, the following week, Sobia and I are both delivering EDI training to, I forgot which service area, Sobia.
Is it housing?
No, it's
No.
I can't remember. They go and do all. My mind's gone blank. They go in and regenerate and change the homes for people, and so when we go and do that training, it's tailored towards them. So we make sure that we're changing that. And just to add with the lived experience part, the lunch and learns that we do, I don't think we've mentioned this anywhere within the report, and they are well attended. Over 100 people that tends to be the number that attend each one, and they are all EDI themed, and they are always delivered by people with lived experience. And if I can just give one very quick example, because I know we've spoken a lot, but we're very passionate about this. Sobia had an amazing lunch and learn that was delivered during Black History Month with a local person, an artist and a poet called Raz. And he came in and spoke about how it feels to live in Oxford, but not the pretty Oxford, the Oxford that he knows and understands. And it was really moving, emotional, it was powerful, and it really helped start conversations. So we're talking now about this training, but there's a lot of other things that go on as well in terms of learning through lived experience that we deliver.
Thank you. Thank you. I have some other comments. I'd make some recommendations that beyond the laudable work that you're doing, that you be very bold and progressive in exploring how, as I said, this training translates into living practice. That includes your feedback loop. So it's great that you've got feedback. How are people recounting their experience? What qualitative measures are in place to ensure that you're not missing some of the very nuanced complexities that exist within ED&I work? But there's more, but I won't go into this all now. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may, we also have our staff networks, and we have lead chairs, and we take a lot of insight from them. So they are working with the people who we are serving. So it's really good that we have those networks in place, and we do. Sobia especially meets with them on a regular basis, and they come up with great ideas from the people with lived experience. So just to add that as well. But I've made some notes there and appreciate that feedback. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would suggest maybe if Dan has specific suggestions, you can of course email them because they are in-house. But I was going to say your passion comes through. You're obviously a very impressive double act. So thank you. I think you, Sobia's, you're both down to come in a bit later. So stay on the line because in the internal audit follow-up of recommendations. So thank you, and we will see you again shortly. But do you want to start now with QL optimization?
QL and income generation, with QL and income generation, I was going to take those as read as their prior year, focusing on the 25/6 ones which are outlined, obviously. So if there are any other comments, happy to take them. Otherwise, obviously, I'll move to the procurement.
So we'll go then straight on into the. Is this now the? Well, shall we take purchase cards, which came separately in our pack, but we do have a copy of it?
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to do that one now?
Yeah, so the purchase cards report. So this is a limited on design and a limited on effectiveness. I think we touched on this in the last committee to pre-warn to say this report would be coming, and we probably expected this outcome. So it's not a surprise to management either. And it's probably worth saying at the beginning, there has been quite a journey on this. And I know Phil, who's on the call, will probably talk about the various bits of work he's been doing and his team have been doing to improve arrangements, and actually quite quickly as well. That being said, I'll give you the kind of warts and all bit first, as a bit of context. So when you stand back from this, we've done a review of purchase cards. In the period between April 2024 and March 2025, there was in total just short of £1.5 million that went through purchase cards at the council. The way the system works is you have something called BCOS, which is the Barclaycard expense system. So people have purchase cards, they use them for very valid reasons, particularly around temporary accommodation, which is where there's quite a lot of high levels of spend, where you need to spend quite quickly to source accommodation for individuals, and that can be very expensive. Purchase cards, obviously you're not going to have invoices, etc., necessarily need to be used for that reason. So a lot of the spend is in the housing sector. When somebody uses the card, each month they're meant to upload the receipts onto the system. Once this is submitted, it goes to an approver who then approves it to say, yes, that was valid spend. Obviously, it has to be done retrospectively because it's a credit card. You incur this cost and then it's uploaded. What's happened at the authority over a period of a few years now is a backlog has appeared where these have either been not approved or receipts have not been uploaded, and a mixture of the two, which is outlined in the report. And what Phil's been doing is trying to work through that backlog quite intensively, but it's very resource intensive to do that. So what we found in this review is that obviously there is the backlog and the figures are there, and that obviously this is a fast moving area, so the backlog's probably even less than what it was at the time of reporting, and imagine that's come down further. When we've looked at March, for example, this year, there were 533 transactions, of which 4 were open. So that means someone's incurred the cost, but they haven't actually uploaded the receipts yet. So there's something there about staff not timely uploading receipts, which they should be doing. 8 of them were not approved. So that means they've been submitted, but then the approver's not gone in and approved them timely. And so again, that's an element of this. And some didn't have supporting documentation as well. The second finding is around the issuance of cards. So at the time of review, there were 131 card holders, which we would consider to be too high, if we're being more blunt about that. When somebody makes an application, an email goes to Barclaycard to say, here's the individual, here's their bank details, etc., so they can verify identity. There is a central log, but that central log that the council have doesn't necessarily say what's the reason for this card, the purpose of it, and constantly updating that to make sure it's still valid and there's a valid reason to use it. There's a finding around limits. So there were some instances we identified where there were limits on cards, which were then extended because they needed to be used for temporary accommodation. But that wasn't always approved by the original person that approved it, which we think should be the person because they're the one who have responsibility for that card. And we did, as part of this, do a more judgmental check, which we surveyed 10 different card holders. And quite interestingly, what came back from that probably spoke to a little bit of the culture side. It's not nice reading or nice hearing, but there was one individual who did say they do share their card with others. That shouldn't happen. There's one individual who did say that their card is held in possession by another person. It should, that person sign to say they use the card under their name for their purposes. If someone else used it inappropriately, it'd be that individual that's accountable. That approach should obviously not be happening. So for all of those reasons, and I'm very confident the management are not in disagreement with that conclusion, and it's not nice hearing. However, I can say from speaking to Phil, we do have good confidence that the authority are taking this seriously, are trying to move things on as fast as they possibly can. And I think Phil probably may make some comments, has a roadmap, particularly through to December, to make some quite significant improvements, which include restricting cards, being clearer about if you do not upload receipts and approve them on time, these cards will be withdrawn. And I know action's already been taken on that. So we will do a robust follow-up of this. But for the moment, obviously, we're at a limited opinion with this report.
Well, thank you for that detailed explanation. I think I should invite Phil McGaskill to respond first about the measures that you are taking and the realism of what I think is a December this year. It's only 2 months ahead, deadline for implementation. Phil?
Good evening, councillors, and thank you for summarising that report. That I would also say that the finding of the reporters came as no surprise to our officers, and we'd already begun to recognise the problem that we had and start to put processes in to rectify this problem. So in the intermediate time since the reporters has been drawn up, we've been able to confirm that we've had a good look through all the accounts, and as the report suggests, there've been no incidences of fraud, and this continues to be the case as we check through every account and every outstanding item on the credit card that we currently have. So all the expenditure has been correctly recorded on the council's financial ledgers. So we're assured that every transaction we've been able to investigate so far has been legitimate and should have taken place. The main issue that we identified was the lack of management approval on certain transactions. The value of owner, so in effect, we had many credit cards and a process by which the people who held the credit cards had lost their understanding of the instructions on how they were meant to perform. So as you've heard, some people were sharing those credit cards, some people were not approving the spend of that credit card. So we have fully recognized the recommendations that are contained in the audit, and we've moved to resolve them. A revised policy has been introduced outlining the responsibilities and the consequences for non-compliance. We've circulated the policy along with a statement that each credit card holder has to sign to confirm they understand how to use the card and that they will now follow the instructions that we have in place. This policy has been circulated and been acknowledged and endorsed by our senior management, and that are the instructions have gone out and have been reinforced by senior management to their team leaders and their managers who hold the cards. A council specific application form is now being created alongside the Barclay card form, where appropriate approval has to be sought before a new card is issued. We've also conducted a full review of all card holders and approvers, and outdated records or where a card's not seen to be necessary, we've removed those cards. The cardholder register has also been reformed and reformatted and is now being actively maintained on a monthly basis. Managers have been reminded directly of their responsibilities, and monthly compliance is now in place. So we have a system whereby we check the expenditure the week before each month it's due, and we send reminders out to the authorizing officers to ensure that checks have been completed. The outstanding amount value of unapproved spend at the moment is reduced drastically. It now sits at £9,000 and continues to decline each month. The issue that we currently have, and the reason why we are not able to reduce the £9,000 significantly further, is some of our authorizing officers have lost their connection through misuse to the Barclay card, to the system, and I'm having to contact Barclay card and go through their rigorous security checks in order to get those people reinstated. But I expect further success along those lines in the next couple of months. This analysis has been reviewed by Finance in General, and what we're looking to see is whether we can reduce the amount of spend on the credit cards in general by establishing where we can remove the need for a credit card to bring in P2P processing. So fundamentally, they are the steps that we've managed to take. We appreciate the thoroughness of the payment card review, and it's helped me guide this process in order to close up some of the areas where we've had problems in the past to make sure that accurate recording and reviews take place. I'm open to any questions, councillors.
Thank you. I'm first going to invite Nigel just to comment.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think it's fair to say that this is not our finest hour, basically, and this is one of the very few limited reports that we've had, certainly recently, and in the last sort of month that BDO have been doing the audit. So it's an area which has got out of hand, basically. We will always need corporate payment cards, basically. Certainly, Gurpreet mentioned the temporary accommodation field. Basically, there is a need for a very quick turnaround. Tenants are placed very quickly. Basically, they can't. Landlords will not wait around. Basically, for us to get a payment by transfer, even the following day. Basically, so there is a need, and therefore we will always need corporate payment cards. So therefore, it is absolutely essential we tighten all of these controls. I'm confident that Phil has got this in hand. He has addressed all of the issues, basically. And certainly he will look to complete those probably December, as the report says. And one of the things that we have done recently, and we've proactively done this, if people are not complying, basically, the card is suspended. End of story, basically. They have until the 15th of the month, the following month, to approve their expenditure. We withdraw the card if it's not. And we've actually taken that action. Service directors ring up and say, why have you done this? Well, go and speak to your member of staff. We're not having it anymore, basically. This has got to stop, basically. And that is what we're doing. So we're taking a strong hold on this. And hopefully going forward, as I say, we will ensure the implementation of these recommendations. And when the follow-up audit comes from BDO, we should get a clean bill of health here. But not our finest hour.
I must say this is one of the examples of why I think it's so good to have a truly external internal auditor who has no bias or, just gives an objective view, and you've got comparative experience other councils. Simon.
I suppose, is this going to be a performance management target for everybody that's got a card, and more worryingly, the managers that are supposed to be authorising it? And I suppose, if you're saying you take the card away, what is the impact of that if that means the council can't carry out some sort of function? In most areas, is there more than one card holder, so somebody else could step in and do that work if they aren't there? And I suppose lastly, are we going to can we quite rapidly see another report to see if there's actually progress on this in a few months, maybe?
Do you want on that, and then we'll ask
just
Phil
ask
to
a
respond?
follow-up question to Simon's. Are there any other sanctions apart from taking the card away? Because this could be potential fraud. I mean, especially if they're not linking with the actual thing that's been purchased.
Phil, would you like to respond?
I can answer the checks that we've undertaken so far, and to date, all the managers who can authorise and check the payments have done so. And in all those cases, we've found no instances of fraud, and the expenditure is correctly recorded on the council's ledgers. So there is another element of checking that's involved in so much as the payments are regularly monitored. So what we think is that there's been a breakdown in process here of how the cards are used. And as Nigel says quite rightly, the cards are used in emergency situations generally. The sanction issue around what would be the effect, most areas have more than one card. And there would be an alternative card use if that was necessary. In the cases of an emergency, I am actually a card holder, and I am able to support people in the event that an emergency situation arises and they can't find a person to be able to make that payment. So I'm happy that the processes that we have in place are robust and there's been no fraud. My honest opinion is there's been a breakdown in process and in colleagues understanding their responsibilities while they were dealing with the emergency situations. So far, we've run our checklist now for 2 months. And on each occasion when we've been able to reach out and remind colleagues that they need to make the authorizations, those authorizations have occurred immediately. So we've had one aspect where we had to suspend the card, and we've had no follow-up incidents of that nature since. We do have a number of colleagues who can't currently authorize because we're working our way through the Barclaycard reintegration of their rights. But I expect that to be resolved by the end of the month, and I expect the current measures we have to be successful. In the event that somebody can't make a payment, I can always use our register to find a colleague who can, and my team are in a position to be able to examine that register and route somebody to another person who could help them should that circumstance occur.
And thanks. Phil, can I just clarify? Earlier on, you referred to a figure of £9,000 or thereabouts. Was that the amount by which you've been able to reduce the backlog, or the amount you've reduced the backlog to?
That's the amount we've reduced the backlog to. The backlog has been reduced substantially from when the report was originally issued.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. And so my follow-up to that is there an amount of money, or is there a certain number of transactions you anticipate never being able to reconcile because of a lack of evidence, for example?
At the moment, that does not appear to be the case. I believe that we will be able to certainly make further inroads. There's nothing on that list that I'm expecting not to at this stage. I think that will become clearer when the people at Barclaycard are able to reinstate the authorization permissions of the officers concerned, and we will explore them should any materialize.
Thank you. I just have a couple more questions on that. At page 78 of the report, in the areas of strength section, there's a breakdown of the amount of money that was able to be kind of the worth of the transactions that were able to be reconciled broken down by year. And the number for 2022 is £0. And on page 80, a few pages later, we see that the amount that's outstanding then was close to £5,000 for that year. How much of the remaining balance that needs to be reconciled, or of transactions needing to be reconciled, is from 2022 relative to the whole?
I don't have that figure available to me, I'm afraid right now, but I can get that figure for you and report back.
That would be good to know. Thank you.
Gurpreet, yes.
Just briefly going to add a couple of bits, just for absolute clarity, and I'll give both ends of the spectrum. We cannot, having done this review, say that there is no fraud, just for clarity, because I've heard the word mentioned. Equally, we didn't identify any during the review. So just for clarity, that the additional point to that as well is that what we did identify, however, is that there is potentially areas where spend was used through the credit card, which a layperson reasonably may say, does that need to be through a credit card? Could it have otherwise been done through an invoice or something else? And I think there's examples that we've given on what is at the top of page 81 to say we looked at 5 transactions with receipts from £288 to £1,220. One was, say, for an office chair. Now, there's no receipt. However, I may reasonably argue, is that urgent? And I may challenge that to say, how urgent is that to be done for a purchase card? Similarly with social media advertising, is it that urgent that it needs to be through a purchase card? Now, that's probably the wider question for the authorities, that once this is more controlled, is making sure that, and I'm not suggesting it is the case because we can't, that people are not thinking of a credit, it should be when it's urgent, necessary, immediate, rather than things that could otherwise be done through other means, etc. So that's just a point there. I think from the councillor's question that was raised earlier, in terms of follow-up, these are all due at the end of December. We've had a robust conversation with Phil. To the January committee, we will be bringing a follow-up, and we will work with Phil to get the latest update. So you'll get it to the next committee.
Very much. I'll take Ros, Tiago, and then Simon again.
Right, thank you. Going back again to page 78, if I could. You mentioned there at the end of the scope there, last bullet point, following discussions with the payments team leader, purchasing cards in use at Ox Place and ODS have not been included in this review, as the council did not issue any or monitor any of their expenditure. I'm just wondering, Chair, if we do a recommendation to BDS that looks after Ox Place and ODS, that a review is perhaps done of their processes and governance of purchase cards. Could we make that recommendation, Chair?
I think we certainly can. I mean, do you know, Nigel, what the process is for them?
Do I just bring it up and write to them and say, do it?
No, I don't know the process, but certainly we can ask BDO to have a look at that. Obviously, BDO cover the audits for both OX Place and
I know they do, and there's a
so,
Chinese wall that's explained to me by your good self some years back. There's Chinese wall. You explained to me, I remember, about the Chinese wall. I don't know if you remember, a few years back. Yeah, yeah, for new members, BDS are the same company, but it's not the same people doing the audit for ODS and Ox Place. And I had to ferret that out because I couldn't quite get my head around it because it seemed so ridiculous to me. But that would be good if we could minute that as a recommendation. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And has it recorded? Tiago.
Okay. First, I'm sorry for my late, and I have 3 questions, and I hope nobody did. If someone have done, I'm sorry. Okay, for repeat. The first question is how confident are we that no fraudulent transaction occur, given the lack of documentation and delays approved? The second is, how will the council ensure that believers are promptly identified and their cards deactivated beyond relying on the liver checklist? And the last is, what training or support is being provided to the card holders and approvers to ensure they understand and meet their responsibilities? Thank you.
I'm going to suggest the first one, which is about fraudulent activity. I think Peter's already mentioned, but respond, can we be sure there is no fraudulent activity?
I'll repeat the same answer. We've done a sample. I cannot say that there is no fraud. Equally, we didn't identify any. I probably think the bigger ticket item is that it may be used in ways where it may not necessarily be relevant to use it through a procurement card. It could be done through invoicing.
But the other two are for Phil, I think. Remind me, one was what happens when someone leaves. Make sure that the card's deactivated. What was the second one?
Can I take them one at a time, Chair?
Yeah, please.
So as part of the process when somebody leaves the organisation, there's a document to be completed with our HR team. So that we have now incorporated a process into that document whereby when the person leaves the organisation or changes a role and no longer needs the credit cards within the organisation, we now have a process whereby that credit card is returned and then destroyed.
Thank you very much. Then the second question. Phil?
Oh, sorry. Is that with regards to the monthly checks?
Yes.
So we have an online live link into the Barclaycard process, so we can observe every expenditure and we can monitor before the 15th of the month whether that expenditure has been authorised and approved by the officer. And we have a reminder process which goes out to the authorising officer to ensure that spend as authorised. And should that spend not be authorised, we then investigate why, and we also have the ability to suspend that card temporarily while the investigation continues. And then once the investigation is completed, we can reauthorize or remove that card from that person.
Thank you very much. Very comprehensive answer.
Yeah.
Training, sorry, yes.
Yeah, can you tell me if the city council give any training for the card holders? And
Oh yes, so initially there was training for the card holders. We actually have created a procedure note with how the card should be used. We've asked that the individuals read through that procedure note. On the back of that is a document where they must sign to say that they understand the process and they would adhere to it and the consequences of not doing so.
Thank you. Simon.
Yeah, there's some comments about this £25,000, £35,000 limit. Is that in one purchase or over a period? And I'm wondering, for instance, have we modelled what the expense would be if we had to rehouse everybody in Hotmore Tower in one night, all of a sudden from some emergency? There's be a significant number of people to sort of have to find accommodation for. Have we modelled that in terms of these limits?
Hi, Councillor. We work with the officers concerned who hold the cards and with the teams within that area. So there'll be multiple people who hold cards. We're also able through our list to support a person if they needed to spend a larger amount than their credit card limit, because we have a connection to various card holders. So although we haven't got a model for a complete disaster on what we would need on a credit card spend, we do have some capacity to cover large spends amongst the group should they occur.
Ros again.
Bit of a light bulb moment, but actually for me, if Roger is still on the call, it's possibly a potential risk that's not been identified. So if we had a major disaster that needed rehousing of several people, dozens, hundreds, then that would be, a significant risk. I mean, I guess you're thinking of something like the Grenfell Tower disaster or something like that, possibly flooding, or possibly, a shorting out of power within a tower that couldn't be remedied quickly. I don't know. I mean, big disaster. I mean, I don't know with our corporate risk register, because that is a corporate risk, where that comes in. I don't think I've ever seen that written anywhere. When we've had, corporate risks with IT disasters and things, but we've never had one. Actually, I think what Simon was referring to, which is a physical need.
Yeah, I guess there's a risk of they're finding accommodation for that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it's linked to this ability to do find fast temporary accommodation and pay for it by credit card. Yeah.
I suggest that we note this as a
risk
that
Nigel's face. Sorry.
No, I suppose just to say, we do try and plan for as much risk as we can. I mean, I know, for instance, if there was a flooding disaster, and I certainly attended training, and you look to say open a leisure centre or a community centre for a period of time. In terms of homelessness, which is our biggest area where, there is an immediate need for some payment facility, basically, because say landlords don't hang around, basically. That is where we have quite a number of cards in that area, and different staff have different levels. We do have contracts with at least 3 hotels off the top of my head. We have contracts with 3 of the hotels, basically. So we can basically, use that facility. But even then, we sometimes go beyond that contract, and therefore there's a need for the payment card. We do have Kieran, who I see he's got his hand up, actually.
Yes.
So, Chair, you might want to know.
I know.
He works in this area. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Kieran, you obviously know firsthand, so and thanks, Hannah, for pointing it out. Would you like to comment?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's a good observation. I think one of the key things which we're looking at rolling out with support from financial services is we're implementing a new well, not new, we've established a procurement framework. So we sort of identified, because there's the risk of the payment, there's also the operational resource of staff in terms of how, the more credit card payments you make, the more you have to upload, which obviously is quite challenging from a resource perspective for the team. So one of the things we've done is we've rolled out a procurement framework where we're procuring suppliers to offer interim temporary accommodation. And that's where we enter into spot and block contracts for suppliers. And the payment is on an invoicing basis as well. So it sort of eliminates the sort of need for purchase card payments. We've also looked at who we use on an emergency basis. So, for example, we use some suppliers and we've spoken to them suppliers directly about instead of doing sort of ad hoc purchase card payments, whether we can have more of an online account with them. So where there's sort of a online invoicing system as well, which we've done, which has also been really good in terms of income reconciliation, but also from a staff time and resource perspective has some efficiency. So I thought it'd just be important to sort of just speak on that point there because it might help sort of provide the council some reassurance.
Are you reassured, Simon? He said maybe. You've made me reassured. I'm going to say thank you very much for this very helpful report, and we have noted that we will be getting an update on whether you've achieved all your December deadlines, but we'll hear back in January. And we've also noted, I hope, that we should ask if something similar is done for those two companies, especially ODS, where I suspect there's a lot of use of credit cards. That would be a guess, but it's quite likely. So let's now turn on to the agenda item 9, but it's the internal audit follow-up, and this is for Joe. Would you like, please, to introduce it?
Thanks, Chair. I'm pleased to present our internal audit follow-up of recommendations report. Any recommendations that we raise on issue of internal audit reports are either assigned a rating of low, medium or high. They're also assigned a responsible manager and an implementation due date. Just to note that we only follow up on recommendations that have been rated a medium or high. If you could please refer to page 36 of the pack, of which we've created a pie chart which demonstrates progression by the council towards implementation of recommendations since 2023. Of the 32 recommendations that we followed up since 2023, 19 have been completed, which is a completion rate of 59%. There are 4 overdue recommendations from 2023 to 2024 and 2 from 2024 to 2025. I would like to draw particular attention to the recommendations resulting from the 2023 to 24 income generation audit and also the 2024-2025 GDPR audit, of which there are 2, 1 recommendation for each that are high rating and also currently overdue. With regards to the income generation audit, we've received management response that there's been delays in the implementation of the recommendation. This is in regards to the procurement of an asset management system. This is now anticipated to take place in April 2026. We've noted this as a concern given that this has been delayed by nearly 3 years, and also the fact that this has been given a high priority rating and since hasn't been implemented by the council. And with regards to the GDPR recommendations, we have not received a management response with regards to these recommendations, despite multiple chases to the responsible manager and also escalation to Nigel within the council. They haven't also provided a response regarding a revised due date of these recommendations. As such, we have implemented such a date ourselves to make sure that these recommendations are followed up ahead of the next committee. Given that there are 4 recommendations noted, and again, there's a high priority one that's noted as overdue,
we would have expected some management response with regards to progression towards completion for these actions. Again, given since they have been delayed now since April 2025. Whilst it's been noted that the council have made progression towards completing of outstanding recommendation, there's still some areas of concern on actions being delayed in implementation, and also, as mentioned, in cases where we've not received any management response despite multiple chases.
Yeah, I suppose I support the auditor's comments, and I share the concern basically that there are too many follow-up recommendations which haven't been implemented. I mean, Joe's quite rightly focused on the high level. I mean, if we've agreed these as high level recommendations, basically, then to be suggesting that we're waiting over 3 years basically for implementation is not a good situation to be in. I mean, I think Rachel might want to pick up in a minute basically the ones in terms of law and governance, and also ones on the overdue list as well, basically, again relating to audit, law and governance. But I do feel that it's not a good state of affairs, and I think the auditors have got a right to be concerned, and I think the committee needs a right to be concerned as well. I do try and push as much as possible, and in the previous, basically, we have quarterly invited the manager to come and explain why they keep pushing these back. I think any of these that are on the next audit report that come in January, I think you should insist the manager turns up and the manager basically explains to committee basically the reason for the inaction, basically. I mean, in some instances, they may well be valid. I have some sympathy with the property one, basically. I know there was a failed procurement, basically, and they had to restart the whole process again, basically. And as Joe says, I think they're implementing schedule for April 26th, I think we were saying. So I have some sympathy there, but there are far too many of these recommendations that have not been implemented. Managers have the discussion with the auditors about A, the level of risk that they deem, and B, the time period for implementation. They have every opportunity to say, we're going to do it by X or Y. So to keep coming back and saying, well, we didn't hit that date, we pushed it back again and again and again, I think it's simply not good enough. So putting words in your mouth, Chair, basically, I think there is something to say that the manager for the next meeting, if they push it back again, they come to the meeting and explain. But Rachel, I don't know whether you want to pick up the high recommendation in terms of law and governance and DPO.
Rachel?
Yeah, certainly. I've chased an update on this. Emma Jackman is back next Tuesday, so next Wednesday, so she'll be back at the helm of this. But as I understand it from her, obviously there are delays. That's clear. That's evident. But I understand, some of it's through staffing and leave arrangements. But I'm also told that the service areas have updated their individual ropers and retention schedules, and this has all been done. And this is what I'm just reporting what I've been advised, and that BDO do have access to all of these documents as well as a tracker document, which acts like a contents page. So I think what BDO has asked for is all of this to be pulled together into a composite kind of portmanteau, I suppose, overarching document. And that is what's going to be done. But following the cyber incident, I think that revealed like some lacuna in service areas and databases that aren't up to date. So as I understand it, that's what's been reported back to me by Emma. And also I saw ahead of this earlier today an update from Grace Wingham, who's the Senior Information Officer at the Council, that is what they are doing. And the action plan has been put in place to kind of undertake this work, which goes through to January. So that's what I've been advised. is the plan to put everything in place. But I do appreciate that there is significant delay, and members may well have quite legitimate views about that. And I would just echo what Nigel has kind of said there. We had a good chat earlier today about all of this, but it is about keeping to the timescales and making sure that this is actually done in a timely manner, but with the actual completion date, and for you to hear directly from Emma when she returns. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, I know you haven't been with the council very long. You're standing in while Emma's away. I mean, I think it should be said to Emma, I don't know if she was away on these dates for which meetings were not possible, but I suppose one of two things. Do you know whether she was away?
So we had an original meeting booked in with Emma to discuss these. That then got cancelled when she went on leave. So we chased, obviously following up that with Grace, but I think at that point it kind of got lost a bit in translation between who was available to answer them. So that was a bit unfortunate in terms of timing of Emma going on.
I would suggest that it is a priority that a meeting, can be online. It doesn't have to be in person. Should be arranged quite soon. I know she'll have a big in-tray, but I think it's important that Emma should have a conversation with Joe, Gurpreet, whoever is necessary at BDO, just to make sure that things are clear. And from what you said, Rachel, it may well be that the response has been more advanced than is implied by the comments here. But I think that's an important priority when she does return.
Yes, absolutely. As I understand it, that is what I've been told, that the work has been done, but until final retention schedules are, I don't know, checked over, she doesn't want to sign it off as as DPO to say all is fine and dandy until she has that absolute assurance. But in terms of all the work that sits behind it, as I understand it, that has been completed. But as you said, quite rightly say, Chair, I mean, that doesn't help you. You just need to know, well, where are we and when's it all happening? And it needs to happen in a very timely way, given, we do have red rags on an audit, which is not a good position to be in.
Thank you, Gurpreet.
I was just briefly going to say that thank you for the summary. I think we do take some comfort from that verbal assurance. We will follow that through and assure this committee that we'll do that. I was just going to note one thing, is that then it could well have been possible that information could be shared with us, and Nigel will attest to this. There has been some server issues in the last couple of weeks. Even when we've shared emails to Nigel, attachments weren't going through, and so we had to find workarounds. And I don't know if this is a legacy from the cyber issue or whatever it may be, but there have been some quite difficult email issues. So it may be something that has been attempted to be sent to us, but it's never appeared. Obviously we have then escalated to Nigel, so it's just that could be possible. Either way, I take comfort from the verbal assurance. We will follow it through and potentially come to a management meeting. I think that's probably an easier way of solving it, and just sitting with management and going through to these till we've got comfort.
Could I ask, in that context then, Nigel maybe can update us. I mean, is there a generic internet, cyber, whatever problem, or is it very specific?
I don't think we've actually got to the bottom of it. I mean, Joe sent an email basically, I can't remember, on the Thursday to me at about 4 o'clock, just before the agenda was being published. And I received that on the Friday at about 10 o'clock in the morning. So, yeah, that's what some of these papers were delayed coming to committee. Yeah. They were delayed for that reason. The auditor had actually clearly done them basically and sent them. I didn't receive until 10 o'clock the following morning. So after that, the agenda had been published. So, yeah, I've not got to the bottom of what happened there, basically, but I don't think it's isolated. I think there are a number of officers, so I probably need to just do a bit more research on that, actually.
Could I request, if it is a more widespread problem, be good to the extent that we as councillors are rather remote, be nice for us to be informed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for that comment. I think that's important. I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to this income generation again and the fact it's been delayed 3 years that we know of now. I think what worries me here is that the procurement of the new system has been delayed. And we know the problems that we've had with Aggresso and so forth. I mean, you know, it's a bit of a chocolate teapot, really, isn't it? Has been. I'm just worried about us procuring another system to then, you know, clink it on somehow to the Aggresso system, make the whole thing reconcile and so forth and work for the council. I don't know if Roger's still on, but again, that's another risk, but it comes under IT risk, I guess, of things not working together. I'm just wondering, Chair and Nigel, if the delay has been, the 3-year delay has been actually part of the problem with the concerns that IT can actually get the new, they haven't bought it yet, it says the procurement of the new system has been delayed. So they're delaying it because they're not sure what they're going to buy is actually going to work. And again, that's a bit of a disaster as well, isn't it? A waste of money.
If I can come on in on that one, Chair. So I've had a chat with the property team, basically Emma Gubbins, in this respect, who unfortunately couldn't make it tonight. But the reason that this particular one is delayed is a number of reasons. One, the first one is that they went out to procurement, but the procurement didn't comply with the new procurement regulations. So they had to pull the procurement process and they had to go back to square one to redo the documentation, re-tender the system, basically. I'm reliably informed, basically, that they are now formulating their next tendering exercise, and they would hope to go out this side of Christmas with a view to awarding the contracts in the next 3 months of the new calendar year. It'll probably take six months to implement, so you're probably looking another 6 months down the road, basically, before that system is implemented, and essentially before this risk gets boxed off.
Or we possibly get another glitch. Sorry, I'm a bit pessimistic on the 6 months. So we haven't got the best track record of IT systems.
Yes, I'm aware we've got Melissa, Kieran and Sobia online. Now, I'm just trying to see which of the recommendations actually relate to Melissa and Sobia, because we've already had you. Which were the ones which are there?
Potentially, the ones around iTrend.
No, I can help. It's the 2 recruitment and retention on
Recruitment,
page. Yes.
Did you want to respond in terms of the repeated delays for those ones?
I'm standing in for Gail Malkin tonight. The 2 final points that are left. So 1A was remaining. That is now action. So the updates to the policy, the final step in that process was to go to CLT. They've been to CLT now, and the policy is ready to be published.
Sorry, I was checking with Nigel. Are we on track? I guess
we're on track. We're on track. So for 1A, which was the recruitment policy, the revised date said we would publish on the intranet by mid-October. That will go out next week. It's been to CLT as the final step, and there were a few minor adjustments, so that will be ready. So that should not be seen again in the next update in January. And again, with the points which are 2A and 2B, I think I updated the audit committee last time when I came in July on this, but this is about the using iTrent for documentation storage purposes. We can't do that. It doesn't have the capability to do so. So we do need to remain at the moment with iDocs. This is another system, though, that is currently on the re-procurement list. We've actually extended the contract contract, or will be extending the contract with iTrent for 1 year, due to other systems that are being purchased and implemented. But this will be something that we put on the specification for the new system when it arises. But for the time being, it will remain with iDocs.
Thank you very much. And I notice there are 2 items, this is in progress, which are delayed. Homeless prevention, which are down as being Richard Wood's responsibility. But I think, Kieran, you are able to give assurance to us that they are on track now. Is that true?
Yeah, so I'm here in Richard's absence. So just talking about the recommendations. So I think the progress is on track. One of the things which I think is important to just clarify is with regards to the recommendation 3A, 3B, 3C. And I sort of mentioned it earlier when we were talking about sort of the framework. We have established a framework, and we have suppliers who have been appointed to the framework, and we have made some appointments through lot 4, which we can I think which we have shared with BDO. However, one of the challenges we're currently facing is around with the framework, it's sort of the council's terms and conditions, and we're procuring, and some of the larger suppliers of emergency housing or just hotel accommodation are struggling to. We're still negotiating the points around them being reluctant to sign on to our terms and conditions. So we're meeting regularly with these suppliers to try and find a solution, which is quite difficult. It is an open framework, so we're continuing to assess more and more suppliers onto the framework, which is positive, because the more suppliers we have on the framework means the more competition we can run and get best value for money. So we hope to be able to launch the framework in full across all of the lots soon, but we just want to make sure that we have enough suppliers on the framework to meet our demand. So if that instance which was mentioned earlier around such an increase in demand urgently, the suppliers on our framework can meet that demand versus us having to go outside the framework. So I thought that would just be important to update on. And then with regards to recommendation on the head of housing should investigate options for system integration solutions between QL and Housing Benefit System Civica. At the moment, there's no sort of immediate possibility to deliver the system integration. However, I can take that away and work with colleagues in IT and hopefully provide a more concrete update at the next meeting. But right now, there isn't any possibility for that to be implemented immediately.
Okay, thank you very much. I saw Simon had his hand up.
Yeah, I guess what are those problems that the suppliers are struggling with? Is it things like willingness to pay up to living wage and things like that, or is it other things?
Yeah, so I think it depends on the supplier, if it's a national company or whether it's a smaller company, because some of the suppliers might not have any employees as such. They might be running the sort of small guest house themselves. But in terms of some of the issues are around terms and conditions around indemnity and sort of clauses like that, in terms of the sort of the standard terms and conditions a lot of suppliers will have, which wouldn't necessarily be appropriate for bookings made by the council. So that's why they're sort of challenging for us to try and negotiate on it. So it's really the main issues are with sort of the bigger providers. So your national companies will have a standard set terms and conditions and a formula for how that works. It's about how we can sort of make sure that our terms and conditions can be used as opposed to the standardized versions. Hope that sort of makes sense.
Thank you. I mean, I can imagine the problems. Well, thank you very much. I think the most urgent thing is, as Rachel knows, when Emma is back, it would be good to arrange as soon as possible, at least a call, if not a meeting, with BDO, just to catch up on those. And from what you're saying, maybe things are fairly advanced, but we're just not aware of how to convey that. So thank you very much. And Ros.
Sorry, there's still a couple of things, if that's okay, that I'd like to highlight, I guess, really, more than anything. The conclusion on the homelessness prevention, I guess you've read this report, Kevin, and it's disappointing, let's put it that way. I mean, the council are yet to establish formal contracts with accommodation providers for temporary housing, particularly with their target temporary accommodation provider, the Easy Hotel people. Apparently a temporary accommodation framework has been approved by the Cabinet back in July 2024, so we're 2 years over on that one. And the council are now working with temporary accommodation providers to enable them to submit a tender proposal to be included in the new framework. I'm just thinking this is, another instance that has no glory over it, 2-year delay on this. Why is it taking such a long time to put it in place, I guess, is the question there. And I'm not expecting an answer, Kevin, from you this evening. I'm looking at the time and so forth. And then the other thing, just over the page, which I think is a worry for me, I have to say, this fire risk assessment, specialist advice. I don't know, Chair, if you've read that in minuted, but I mean, I've highlighted it because it really is very worrying for me. I think reading that, I really do. And just the last thing is the accounts payable. There's a conclusion there. The council's not undertaking any management reporting since March 2022, which has resulted in a lack of management oversight over key concerns of the suspense accounts backlog. And I think we've covered that earlier on with the credit cards and things as well. But looking at this, where we have a subcontractor to Bright Heat, and then they've subcontracted it to 217 fire risk assessments to Guardian Consultancy, who further subcontracted to Hawk Fire Safety. And then when you go to VM Fire Safety, reviewed the four, and then found that one inspector enforcingly claimed his IFSN registration. I mean, Bright Heat and its subcontractors have not found on any relevant fire safety registers. I mean, it really is an awful lot of worry, this actually, and risk for this council. It really is. Sorry.
Sorry.
Page.
I was going to say, I think we've moved
56.
to the next report. Potentially.
Sorry, I'm just
no, it's
trying.
okay.
I'm just
I don't know if you
looking
want
at
me
the
to
time and thinking
summarise.
I should have
No, it's
waited
okay.
till you've gone to it. I do apologise.
Shall I summarise?
Come in, yes, please.
Please. Tell us some good news.
It's okay. So the next report is the annual opinion. This did come to the committee last time, and in fact, the specific one about fire risk, I think, has been reported back in January. Just taking that one in particular, there will be a follow-up of those findings, but a more detailed one in a separate report. I think the aim is for that to come to January. Is that right, Joe?
We're coming out mid-November to do that.
Yeah, so we're starting that field work in mid-November.
Next month.
And so it's possible that in January we will have a response, obviously, because we've re-raised those concerns to say what has the authority done since. I don't know at this stage, but this committee will receive that report in January. So this report here is our annual opinion. As your head of internal audit, I'm required to provide an opinion as an overall view of governance, risk and control. I probably just want to balance things back out. It's been one of those committees where there's been a lot of difficult conversation, and Nigel will know this, as over the last decade, these kind of committees don't happen that often, but they do, and that's part of why we're here, is to have that challenge. And it's been good to hear the healthy debate and discussion today. I do want to provide that balance that actually, when we stand back in general, the number of findings this year are pretty consistent with the prior year in terms of the number of medium findings, the number of high findings. There's one in each of this year and the prior year. The substantials and moderates, again, are pretty consistent as well. So whilst we've had a few all come in one go to this one, when you stand back, actually, there's a relative amount of consistency between years. Even when I look at things, say, like accounts payable that I know has just been mentioned, we've talked about procurement cards earlier. Now that's 1.5 million and a much reduced figure now. Actually, accounts payable are your main controls materially around paying organisations. And when we've looked at that, we think they're in general sound, moderate controls. And so from a material point of view, we have to take account of that. And it's good to see that that is in a moderate position. So I just want us to make sure we've got the right focus sometimes financially. Doesn't mean that those other issues aren't issues, they are. But from a materiality point of view and a financial point of view, we do have to take into account of the main fundamental systems we find are generally operating well. So as this has come before, I won't go into too much further detail and say it's relatively consistent to the prior year, which gives us comfort and assurance. And therefore I do issue a moderate opinion, which is our way of saying thumbs up. There are things to improve. And when I look at those things to improve, it is obviously in this report, the GDPR areas. I'm hoping that some of the verbal assurances are accurate, and that will feature into our work this year and follow up. Because from a very basic point of view, our reports are just a piece of paper. Unless management actually act upon them, that means change is happening. When you do look at the percentages that Joe issued earlier, 60% are complete or 59%, 19% are in progress. So whilst there is a lot of red flags on there, 80% are either complete or in progress. 20% are the stubborn ones, not individuals, I mean recommendations, sorry, that we're not getting to complete. And that's what we really need to focus on. And that will be our priority between now and the end of the year. So it's a moderate, but they're the areas of, if you like, concern that we may flag in our annual opinion in the year ahead. But for the moment, we're on a moderate opinion, and it's relatively consistent to the prior year, notwithstanding some of the areas we've discussed today.
Yeah, I think that's probably the however many years you've been doing the audit, about 8th or 9th time, basically, we've had the moderate opinion. And I think, you know, moderate in terms of a word doesn't sound that good, basically, but I think you've got to go to the back of the report and the annual opinion definition. And moderate, where it significantly meets expectations, and it provides assurance that arrangements should deliver the objectives and risk management aims of the organisation in the areas under review. There is some risk of failure or non-compliance. So I think, you know, that is what moderate means in the sense of what BDO are saying, actually. And I think tonight is a flavour of that, basically. I think if you assessed it on tonight even, you probably come up with the same opinion in terms of moderate. You've heard in terms of treasury management, of substantive, in terms of effectiveness and control, absolutely top marks, basically, can't get any higher, sort of thing. Equally, you've heard on credit cards, basically limited and limited. So, and a number of other reports in the mix, basically. So I think even if you looked at tonight's, basically, you probably come up with the same conclusion. I'm not to get to the dizzy heights of substantial for that overall opinion, and perhaps in my lifetime I'm not going to get there, basically, for obvious reasons. But equally, I think moderate is a good position to be in, and I think that's what Capreet's saying as well, actually. Thank you.
I was very quickly going to add, just for context, there's only one organisation that we've issued substantial for in the last few years. In fact, moderate is the most common opinion. There are limiteds. Oxford have never been in that region, but we do issue a small handful of limiteds each year to take some assurance from your in amongst the pack. We don't think you're close to limited. We would write that in here. I think if we saw follow-up follow, you know, not operate well enough, and we'd need 2 or 3 more limited opinions in an annual year for us to start considering that as opinion. So it is a clear moderate. There is only one authority that we have as a substantial. There are a handful of limiteds, and Oxford are not in that region.
And could I ask, just come back to one comment that Ros jumping to this agenda item mentioned. No, that's okay. It sounds as if, in terms of accounts payable, as if the management since 2022 is somehow not interested in this. You know, it is remarkable. Management reporting has not taken place since March 2022 due to changes in the system. I mean, you can change the system, but you still surely have to report. What would be the answer? It does seem very odd.
I think it's fair to say, Chair, that during this period, we had a substantial amount of problems in this area and across the the finance business. I'd lost the head of that team basically for quite a long duration basically, and we'd lost other members of the finance team that were critical to the operation of the payments team. I think it's slightly stretched to say management weren't interested. As the overall manager of this team, basically, I'm absolutely interested. And indeed, going forward, I certainly appointed Phil as the revenues and payments manager. And I see he's got his hands up at the moment just to sort of corroborate what I've just said, actually. But Phil, do you want to give some assurance around this?
You're on mute.
I'm very engaged in resolving some of the issues that we have with accounts payable, and I was personally involved in the construction of the spreadsheets with some of my colleagues in Bill's team to be able to enable us to produce KPIs and to be able to make some reporting earlier in the year. We did have some failings in the reporting document that we had. It was written by a subcontractor to our ICT team who subsequently left, and the person who had those skills was not able to fix that for us. So it was a collaboration between myself and Ryan on Bill's team that was able to spot the flaws in the lists and to fix them. Nigel's shown quite a bit of faith in me, really. I think he sees me as a problem solver, and there was a while the payment team and the area in which the management accountants were sort of, the person that led them for a while left the organization, and there was a period where there was a number of people who were in to support that team, who subsequently moved on. So Nigel gave me that role. I'm very interested in solutions and in automation and in bringing some modernization through the whole group. And I believe that in the next year or so, we should be able to deliver some major improvements. It's my ambition to do so.
I feared for a second, Phil, that you were saying you are a problem. No, you are the problem solver, you said. Well, it does sound as if you're enthusiastic about it, which is half the battle. So do you want to add anything?
No.
No, Nigel is content as well. So thanks very much, Phil. Any other questions for Joe and Gurpreet on this? Because are we... Well,
are we going to make any suggestions to Cabinet? Sorry, are we going to make any suggestions to Cabinet about this fire risk assessment, specialist advice? Because, you know, even if a member of public was, or any resident was reading this, I think they'd be quite alarmed by this lack of you know, fire risk assessments. I'm just thinking back on a personal point. I've got a feeling that it was we had somebody out to a community centre where I'm a trustee to do a fire risk assessment. I couldn't stay with them all the time, that they were going around the building. I then asked, would I be sent a copy of it from the City Council? Because we actually need a copy of it. We have never been sent it. Now, we have done our own, as volunteers and trustees, our own fire risk assessment of the building because we have to. But, you know, if the council is paying for a service and not getting it, then I think we need to highlight this to Cabinet.
Yeah, I mean, Gurpreet might want to come back. So I thought I heard Gurpreet say that a lot of these recommendations will be followed up in the next iteration. Is that correct, Gurpreet?
Yeah, so just for comfort, there's a specialist in our team, somebody called Josie Woodward, who has the appropriate qualification, which is NBOSH, and I forget what it exactly stands for, but it means that you can go to properties and legally assess them in terms of fire and safety qualifications. So she did this review. It was when the authority had a number of contractors in. So these are conclusions that she had reached as part of that. Joe has emailed the team because we've decided on this particular one, given the concerns, that we will do a more detailed follow-up. So it sits in a separate report rather than in our follow-up report. Josie will be involved in that review as well, as she did the original one. Sitting here today, we've done the original review. Management obviously gone away, hopefully taken actions. I don't know a position as of yet, but in mid-November, we'll be going back and asking the questions that you're asking here, which is, we identified subcontracting to subcontracting. We saw people who may not have been registered, or that's what it appeared, and management accepted that. Can you tell us what you have subsequently done? Have you revisited those assessments and performed them again? Have you checked the qualifications, etc.? So I don't know at this point, sat here today. We'll be asking those questions and we'll report back, hopefully to January, if it's completed by then, to give you that position. Any other actions as committee take are obviously at your discretion.
Could I just ask which team, which service area is that under?
Yeah, it's in the property division within housing, I think, actually.
Okay. Well, I mean, Ros has rightly expressed great concern about what's written here, but I think we have to note, this is only ever for noting, but we should note that by the time of our next meeting, we hope that it will have improved. And if they haven't done all of the type 3 assessment, at least it will be procured, you know, someone will be contracted and it'll be underway. And we can't wish for any more. I just
I asked Chair was whether we highlight this to the cabinet member. I mean, that was the question that I was asking, because I think they need to know what's happening in their section.
Thank you. Any other last comments from our visitors from BDO? Joe, Gurpreet, anything further you'd like to add? So thank you very much. We can now, at long last, let poor PT, who's probably wondering when she's ever going to be allowed to speak to us. Can you please tell us the state of play with the external audit?
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. As we all know, with the cyber incident, which resulted in delay of the publication of the 4/5/24/25 accounts, we have had to rephase our audit resourcing. And the audit work has commenced last week, and we are currently planning to conclude and sign the audit opinion by the backstop date, which is February 2026. With the cyber incident, we have also engaged EY's cybersecurity specialist to complete the procedures required in response to this type of incident, and this work is currently undergoing. We are obtaining our understanding of what has occurred and the arrangements that the council has subsequently put in place. As mentioned in the last committee meeting, in our audit planning report, the key audit risks for 24/25 remains the same. And at this stage, there are no further updates to report to the committee in relation to the risks. I would like to add, during the 23/24 audit, which is last year, we were unable to obtain assurance over property, plant and equipment and investment properties, which proved a little bit particularly challenging, I would say. And this limitation continues to impact the 24/25 audit. And at this stage, we are anticipating we'll be issuing a disclaimed opinion for the year. And the last, but not the least, I would say we are in a slightly unusual position this year, as we are required to issue the draft auditor's annual report by 30th of November 2025, and this is in line with the NAO guidance, which sets this reporting deadlines. Our value for money work is ongoing, and as the audit work will not be fully completed by this date, the final auditor's annual report will be issued at the point the audit opinion is signed. Happy to take any questions.
I was just going to ask, following what you've just said, and I think in some form property valuations appeared in the risk register. I can't remember how Roger phrased it, but it is somewhere there. Is that the issue? Roger, is that the issue?
Bill's
Oh, sorry, Bill will answer.
No, it's not the same issue. It's what Roger mentioned was around the valuations for insurance purposes, which is a different valuation to that which is used in the statement of accounts. Predominantly, one of the issues around the statement of accounts side is partly due to property information availability, which is similar to the insurance side of things, but also the 5-year rolling program that the council does, and that, you know, to get assurance over the valuations of all of the property that's within the council statements, external evaluations, you know, are on a phase basis. And so therefore may take some time to come through. So we'll be working with EY on this and to see whether we can actually speed up the process. But at the moment, that is the issue, because obviously there's a cost involved around valuations. Costs us a couple of £100,000 for the kind of 1/5 of the valuations that we need to do every year. So it'd be quite substantial if we actually tried to get all of the valuations done at once, and also capacity amongst valuers would be a problem as well.
But I just ask, I mean, for other councils who must have lots of assets as well, I mean, do they have the same issue?
I think I'd probably need to look at Preeti to answer that, but I think from one thing that I would say is that the actual amount of assets that this council holds for a district council is actually far more than you would generally expect. So from an audit perspective, it's almost like auditing a county council because of the size of the property portfolio.
What's your response, Preeti? I mean, are we likely, in terms of, I'm just thinking of disclaimers and so on, are we likely to be able to avoid them? Or is this a continuing problem in terms of how you will present the accounts?
I would like to add, Chair. So the disclaimer is in conjunction with the 2 years we have disclaimed before, 21, 22, and 22, 23. And then we have to, the NO has issued the guidance under LARIX 01, under which there is a procedure to unwind this disclaimer. So first we'll be issuing the disclaimed opinion, and then we move on to qualified, and then qualified except for, and then eventually a clean audit opinion. But in order to reach to that clean audit opinion phase, we have to have assurance over the balances or over the movements that happened during the disclaimed periods, i.e. where we didn't do any audit at all. So under that guidance, which has been issued under LARIX 01, we are evaluating that guidance, how we can unwind at each of our authorities. And one size not fits all, because every authority is different, and as Bill mentioned, to be honest with you, the size and scale Oxford City Council operates in, it I can't class it as a normal for a district council. It feels like a county council. So that also adds back to the complexity, and we will be as soon as the guidance is issued, we'll be in touch with the finance team, Bill and Ryan, how we can unwind the years and get the assurance over the movements in those periods, and move towards a clean audit opinion.
Well, it sounds very complicated, but I thank you very much. Are there any questions for you? I'm looking at the committee. I think we're looking forward with great excitement to, well, probably it's February, so that if it's February, I mean, we would like a very clean update by the January meeting, which I note is, I think it's something like the 26th, 28th of January. So it's almost the February, you say. Bill has his hands up.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is that we'll have to discuss probably with yourself, Chair, about how we actually approach this, because obviously there will need to be, in order to sign it off by the backstop date, there will need to be effectively permission from the committee for yourself to do so, but the committee therefore will need some sort of level of assurance that it's seen a set of accounts. So I think we need to have a discussion with yourself and also then with the auditors, because any updates that are made, kind of, if you make a number of updates and reissue statement of accounts, it means additional audit work, which means we get less done to sort of move us out of this strained position. So we've got a balance to make about sort of getting that kind of scrutiny from audit and governance, but also making sure that the audit is done, as much audit is done as we possibly can manage.
And does that mean in practice that at the next meeting in January, we will be requesting delegation, if you like, to yourself and myself in order to sign off the accounts? Is that what it implies?
Indeed, Chair, but then there would need to be something else going to Audit and Governance Committee, I think, for them to actually to allow them to actually give you that delegation. So we just need to think about what it is that Audit and Governance will require at that point.
Thank you very much. Anyhow, we have 28th of January to look forward to.
There's no way we could get another meeting in before then, is there?
Sorry?
There's no way we could get another meeting in before.
So, well, when we next meet, it'll be another year, be even darker and colder. But thank you very much, everyone, for joining in and staying so long on the call. And we normally take, it seems to me, about 2 hours, and we've done that pretty much this time. So thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you.